Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes Reacts. I'm Office Bloke Dave.
I am Office Bloke Daz.
Collectively we're two of the Office Blokes.
Come up from there, Mike.
Mike's hanging about under the desk since we're freshly manscaped.
Is he waiting for his hair to grow back? Is that what it is?
Yep. Discount code Office Blokes. Right, FBI's most wanted criminals. Fun fact.
Mike's on it.
Well, fun fact, the Interpol's most wanted criminals. Mike was number 1 on there.
I think he went down number 2. I think he dropped a spot.
Well, that's why he's on the lam at the moment, isn't it? He's hit the mattresses. Is that what they call it? Hit the mattresses?
Don't know.
There's one for mobsters when they're in safe houses.
Oh, I don't know.
And it's like sleeping on mattresses on the floor. There's one anyway. Someone will let us know. Yeah, fine Mike or free Mike, depending on when you're watching this. Right, FBI Worst Wanted Criminals 2021 edition. It's not all going to be Terry's. It's going to be some high-profile drug dealers, I think.
It's all kinds on there, isn't they?
It's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I watch a lot of the crime programs when people want it. Have you ever seen anyone on TV that you know? Like on a criminal TV show? No
one I know personally, but I've seen people I went to school with. But I've also seen, there was one with a police chase years ago, and it was a Reliant Robin, which for people that don't know is Del Boy's car.
You could probably run after it and catch it.
Yeah, the three-wheeler from Only Fools and Horses. It was a cop chase program that went down Ashfield Road in Hale. That was behind where I grew up, and it rolled at the bottom of my street. I was like, yeah.
I was watching what do you call it? A crime watch.
Yeah.
When I was at school, and one of our neighbours was on it.
Nice. Nice.
So I went into school the next day and I said to the teacher, it was an armed robbery. I said to the teacher, I saw someone on one of my neighbours was on crime watch last night. And he went, which one? And he said, and he kind of knew. I said, no, what should I do? He went, just leave it. I went, yeah, okay.
Yeah, keep your mouth shut. That's what you should do.
Keep your nose out. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into FBI Most Wanted Criminals 2021 edition. Let's do this.
Wanted. A reward is being offered for this fugitive by the FBI. The poster stares back at you with 10 sinister-looking faces. The worst of the worst. So notorious that the FBI...
Funnily enough, just before we get into it, there was a guy that I used to know who's kind of off his chops, but not like a criminal. We know they released Trafford's Most Wanted, and they put it on the front page of the paper. He was number 1 on that a few years back, yeah. But he'd kind of lost it, and he'd broken into a bowling green hut and was sleeping in there, and had axes, knives, all that sort of stuff. So when the cops kicked the door down and raided it, all these weapons offences and stuff. But he wasn't a malicious person. He just kind of he'd gone a bit.
So he probably had a lot of weapons, killed about 18 people, and got like 3 months in prison.
Yeah,
over a year. That's what he did.
Is offering a massive reward for anyone who provides information leading to their capture. Who are the FBI's 10 most wanted in the year 2021? Number 10. Yasser Abdel Said. Said began his life in a humble way as an immigrant from Egypt in 1983. He soon married an American woman 15 years his junior. They had a son and 2 daughters.
Big fee, isn't he?
He became a citizen, and there was a dark side to this American success story. His daughters, Amina and Sarah, soon started telling their friends and family that their father was abusive. The girls would occasionally show up with bruises and injuries at school. They reported that their father spied on them, with Sarah even finding out that he was spying on her at her part-time job. But his obsession was about to take an even darker turn. Amina covertly started dating a boy, and when Said planned to move the family, she planned to run away with her boyfriend. Eventually, Patricia had enough of her husband and left with the girls, only for Yasser to follow them. He convinced his wife to return home with the girls, and when the teenagers refused, Said shot them both and killed them. Said then went on the run, assumed to have fled back to Egypt, but he was later seen as a cab driver around New York City. He spent 12 years on the FBI's most wanted list with a reward of $100,000 offered for his capture. In 2020, he was found in Texas and he and his son were arrested. He currently awaits trial on capital murder charges, but remains on the list because his case is ongoing. But this next fugitive is still in the wild. Number 9. Robert William Fisher. A Navy veteran and firefighter, Fisher seemed like the picture of an all-American guy in 2001, but his public face hid a darker side. His wife and 2 kids lived in fear of his explosive temper. He was reportedly deeply bitter over his own parents' divorce, and he was controlling toward his wife and children. He displayed other bizarre behavior like shooting stray dogs and smearing animal blood on his face. But no one expected what was to come on April 9, 2001, when people in the neighborhood heard a terrible argument at the Fisher home. Then the explosion happened. The house blew up the next morning, and firefighters battled the fast-moving blaze before finding the bodies of Fisher's wife and kids in the house. But they hadn't died in the fire. They had been murdered. Fisher was on the run, having been seen at an ATM hours before the explosion. He was indicted for 3 counts of first-degree murder but has managed to stay ahead of police for 20 years now. His military background and his experience as a hunter makes him a particularly dangerous fugitive, and the FBI has offered $100,000 for information leading to his capture. This next fugitive was
It's not a lot of money for such a high level of scumbag, is it?
Considering he's been on the run for 20 years. They might want to up the ante on that.
A little bit, yeah. He's going to be in the woods, proper beardy, isn't he, somewhere? Just like outdoorsman.
That's where you'd expect him to be, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and you think how vast some of the forests are in America and stuff.
He might just be in Boston, blending in.
Taxi driver in New York. Maybe that's what they all do.
Basically a ghost. Number 8, Alexis Flores. It was summer 2000 when Philadelphia resident Jorge Contreras took pity on a homeless drifter calling himself Carlos. He gave the unfortunate man shelter, gave him clothing to wear, and paid for his work as a handyman. But this would lead to a horrifying discovery. Carlos had used his shelter to store the body of Ariana de Jesus, a little girl who had been missing for several days. Contreras recognized the shirt she was wrapped in as being the one he had given to Carlos, and a manhunt began for the drifter. But who actually was Carlos? All they had of him was a vague sketch, including a distinctive scar he had on his neck. 2 years later, an undocumented immigrant named Alexis Flores would be arrested for shoplifting in Arizona, and the charges would later be upgraded due to false documents. He was deported to Honduras after his prison term, and that would be a terrible mistake. In 2007, his DNA would be matched to the DeJesus murder. Carlos finally had a name, but he was out of the FBI's reach now. And the US and Honduras do not have an extradition treaty. The FBI is offering $100,000 for information leading to his capture, and Interpol is involved as well, but he remains at large. This next fugitive began his crime spree at the
I kind of feel like that's what... Isn't that what the CIA's for, though? They've got some sort of guys in Honduras just chilling, and they'll come across him and he'll end up on a plane back to America.
Or end up where Mike is.
Oh, shit. No one needs that.
most humble of locations. Number 7. Bhadresh Kumar Chitanbhai Patel. One of the youngest fugitives on the list, Patel seemed like a normal young man in India. He had married his wife Palak by 2015, and the young couple had traveled to the United States to visit relatives. Their visit became an extended one, and they took a job at a local Dunkin' Donuts owned by his relative, where they worked the night shift together on April 12th. But only one of them would leave that night. They walked into the camera, disappeared off the view of the camera, and then Patel left alone and closed the store. The next people in the store would find something horrible. When no one seemed to be on staff, customers approached a police officer and found Palak's body in the back, beaten and stabbed. They quickly fingered her husband for the killing, but Patel had already escaped.
Can I only just get put in jail over here?
I knew exactly. Get a good fingering. Let's hope he was manscaped.
He was last seen taking a hotel shuttle to the airport, and authorities believe he may have fled back to India or be hiding with relatives. What turned this young man into a murderer? Relatives report his wife wanted to return home to India. Wherever he is now, he's been on the run since 2015, and the FBI thinks he's worth a $100,000 reward. But youth is no deterrent for this next criminal. Number 6. Alejandro Castillo. It was 2016 and a 17-year-old Castillo worked at a Greek-themed restaurant in Charlotte, North Carolina, but he was more interested in girls than his job. He had eyes in particular for his co-worker, Truquan Sandy Lili, who was 6 years older than him. They briefly dated, and she even lent him some money, which he never paid back. But even as he went on to dating another co-worker, he never stopped thinking about Sandy, and that fixation soon turned into a dangerous obsession. And then Sandy disappeared. Investigations showed that Castillo had contacted her saying he would pay her back. Instead, he took her at gunpoint to an ATM and made her empty her bank account. He then drove her to the woods, shot her, and dumped her body in a ravine. The teenage murderer then fled in her car along with his new girlfriend, Ahima Feaster. They headed to the border and crossed into Mexico, but only a few months later, Feaster turned herself in to authorities. She cooperated for a lesser sentence and reported that Castillo had gone missing while they were in Mexico, disappearing off the radar. He's still at large, with a $100,000 award offered for his capture. He wasn't the only Romeo-turned-murderer on the list.
Do you think that reward is just the the flat fee, if you know what I mean. If you are in the top 100, it's just 100 grand.
Yeah, like standard.
Yeah.
And if I knew someone who was a murderer or if it's someone who robbed something, I wouldn't be too bothered. Then I'd leave it. But if it was a murder or a rape or anything like that, I'd dob them in. But I'd donate the reward.
Yeah, it'd be kind of dirty taking the money because people like that deserve to get grassed up anyway.
That's the way I see it. Yeah.
I know grass is a dirty word, but when someone's a murderer, a rapist, all that sort of stuff, then
got to pay the price.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So yeah, take the money and
I'd donate it.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
5. Arnoldo Jimenez. Everything seemed to be going right for Arnoldo Jimenez and Estela Carrera. They were happily engaged, had a 2-year-old daughter along with Jimenez's 9-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. And on May 11th, 2012, they were married at Chicago City Hall. They celebrated at a nightclub with their friends and family and then drove home in Jimenez's car. That's when things took a dark turn. The newlyweds started arguing and Carrera quickly discovered that her husband had a dark side. It would be a one-night marriage. Jimenez stabbed his wife fatally and dragged her body into their apartment, leaving it in the bathtub in her wedding dress. When she never picked up her children, she was reported missing and her body was found by police, and Jimenez had disappeared. Police tracked him from Illinois to Tennessee to Arkansas to Texas and eventually to Mexico. They were able to arrest his brother for drugs and find more evidence linking him to the murder, but he remains a fugitive with a $100,000 bounty south of the border. Age was no barrier for this next criminal in the other direction. Number 4. Eugene Palmer. It was 2012 when Eugene Palmer lived next to his son and daughter-in-law in Stony Point, New York. The 73-year-old man watched as his son's marriage fell apart, and eventually his daughter-in-law Tammy filed for a restraining order and threatened divorce. This could cause Eugene to have to leave his home, and he wouldn't stand for that. A nasty feud began between Eugene and his daughter-in-law, and on September 24th, he took action. Tammy walked her children to the bus, returned home, and suddenly came under fire. Eugene was targeting her with a shotgun, and after 3 shots, he finished the job. The senior sharpshooter then fled the scene in a pickup truck, which he abandoned later and fled into the woods. Police led a hunt in the woods with dogs, which tracked his scent to a campground, but no trace of him was ever found. His family believes he's likely dead. After all, how far could a diabetic man with a heart condition now pushing 80 get? But the FBI disagrees. They pointed out that Palmer was an avid outdoorsman and could easily have survived in the woods and fled to another state. And they've offered a $100,000 reward for his capture. But some fugitives
I reckon he's dead. That's the actions of someone who doesn't give a fuck at that age. Got diabetes. How much of a stockpile of insulin is he going to have had?
Yeah, he loses his house or goes to jail or dies.
I think he's at that stage of his life where he's like he's going to go out and he's going to do something horrific and then he's done.
Call it a day.
Yeah. What's the point in going on the run when you're 80 and you're diabetic?
It's a bit like Mike then, isn't he?
I know, yeah. A bit younger than Mike though, isn't he?
and a higher price. Number 3. Jason Derek Brown. Jason Derek Brown had a very unlikely beginning for a wanted fugitive. He was a devout Mormon who served a missionary and owned a toy business. But he had a taste for expensive vehicles and was deeply in debt. He escalated from fraud to theft and home invasions to a robbery that went horribly wrong. In 2004, he bought a Glock pistol and went to a local AMC theater in Phoenix. There, armored car guard Robert Keith Palomares was collecting the weekend box office. A hooded gunman came out of nowhere and shot him 6 times, killing him. The gunman fled with $56,000. It wasn't long before the killing would be linked to Brown. They found his bicycle and found the amateur robber's DNA on it. He was quickly charged with first-degree murder and unlawful flight, but by then he had fled to Las Vegas. Authorities found his car abandoned, and his brother was later charged with obstruction of justice for helping him dispose of evidence. Brown's case became notorious, and sightings of him came from across the United States, Mexico, and Canada. But the genuine article has eluded capture for over 15 years, and the FBI has offered a $200,000 reward for his capture. But the FBI also has their eye on some much larger-scale criminals. Number 2. Jose Rodolfo Villarreal Hernandez. Villarreal Hernandez was born into a life of violence. His father was a member of the Beltran Leyva cartel in Mexico and was murdered by the rival Gulf cartel. It was no surprise that Villarreal Hernandez's involvement in the family business only got more intense, and he had a target in mind for revenge: Juan Jesus Guerrero Chapa, a powerful lawyer for the Gulf cartel, now living in Southlake, Texas, and an informant for U.S. law enforcement. But that wouldn't stop Villarreal Hernandez, who hired a crew to sneak into the U.S. And on May 22, 2013, they would strike. As Guerrero entered his car, 2 assassins pulled up and fired multiple shots at him. He was killed immediately. While the assassins escaped, 3 men connected to their hiring were arrested and named Villarreal Hernandez as the mastermind. While he remains at large in Mexico, the FBI is on the hunt and has offered a $1 million reward for his arrest. But they're not the only ones looking.
It's really crossing him up though. You fucking might know about it.
Oh god, yeah, stay out. But it's mad seeing the difference, the disparity in reward. Organised crime, sort of, he's killed or he's orchestrated the death of one person, $1 million. But people who have actually murdered someone in cold blood, $100,000.
But who do you think is more dangerous?
Him by far, without a doubt. But if is the reward for his capture for that crime, or is it for him?
For him,
everything's done.
Yeah.
Everyone is linked to.
Yeah.
Are they hoping that they'll get him and he'll flip on loads of other people and it'll be worth $1 million?
I think so.
It's crazy, isn't it?
A lot of money.
I thought it was going to be more people like that, like cartel members and stuff, to be fair.
What was he, number 2?
Number 2, yeah.
Guerrero's sister targeted one of Villarreal Hernandez's relatives in revenge, even sending her brother's hitman a picture of the severed head. With enemies like this, Villarreal Hernandez may want to think about turning himself in. But there's one fugitive more wanted than a cartel hitman, a cartel ringleader. Number 1. Rafael Caro Quintero. Rafael Caro Quintero had humble beginnings as a farmer, but his crop of choice would lead to a lot of trouble. He grew marijuana, and that...
Is he the one from Narcos? Rafa?
Oh, I don't know.
He was Quintero, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
That turned him from a simple worker into a local land baron. He worked for many of Mexico's most notorious gang leaders and became a successful drug trafficker in the 1970s. But he would soon branch out on his own, and he formed the Guadalajara cartel. He shipped mass quantities of marijuana to the United States, but would be most notorious for his kidnapping, torture, and murder of U.S. DEA agent Enrique Camarena and 4 others. He would eventually be sentenced to 40 years in prison for murder in Mexico. But there's a twist to his story coming. A state court ruled that he'd been tried improperly and ordered him set free in 2013. This caused outrage across the border, and diplomatic pressure forced Mexico to reopen an investigation. They eventually issued a new arrest warrant, and U.S. and Mexican forces continue to pursue him to this day. He remains at large, with his attorneys trying to get the charges dismissed but failing. With Interpol and the FBI looking for him, the notorious drug kingpin commands the highest reward for any criminal on the FBI's most wanted list. A stunning $20 million.
Wow.
See any of them in your neighborhood? Keep your eyes open and approach carefully. For more on America's
Don't
Most
approach.
Wanted, check out Scariest Criminals on U.S.
Don't approach.
Don't approach carefully. Don't bother. Yeah.
Well, I think that it's either Narcos or something. I think it is Narcos, though.
Was Escobar, wasn't it? That was about Escobar.
Narcos Mexico, then.
Oh, I didn't see Narcos Mexico.
Because it sort of ends, I'm sure it's Narcos Mexico, it ends with the kidnapping of a DEA agent, and they end up torturing him, and then it's the debate whether or not to kill him, and then because they kill him, it escalates everything and blows it all apart for all of them. So I think that's who it is.
Yeah, I've not seen that one. So
Narcos Mexico, that I watched that before Narcos. It's great, really good.
Interesting, that though, isn't it?
Yeah. Reward on one of us would be about 20 quid, wouldn't it?
Don't think I'll have a reward. Wouldn't be hard to catch, would we?
No. How much would you
yeah, we check the pub. There he is.
How much would you grass Mike up for?
Free.
Sorry, Mike. We'll see you.
It was him.
See you in 18 months.
6 to 18.
6 to 18. Yeah, it's good, that though.
Good, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget, like and subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.